Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Jazakallah khair for joining us on another exciting, very informative webinar on how to buy your home the halal way. As per usual, our time is extremely limited and we have a lot of ground to cover, and actually even more ground to cover with the latest announcements that we had in the last 24 hours. So let us begin with our presentation tonight. First and foremost, anything that you see in this presentation is for general purposes only. It's not intended to provide you with personalized legal, tax, or investment advice. It is not intended to solicit purchase of investments and securities. Any information in here is sole responsibility for myself and Assad Wealth Management. And if you want to discuss specific matters when it comes to your own finances, when it comes to your own ability to buy your home the halal way, please reach out to us so we can have a more informed and a personalized conversation, inshallah ta'ala. Actually, I was talking to somebody today at the office, and they asked me if my webinar was planned based on the federal announcement today that came out yesterday. And I told them absolutely not. We planned our webinar almost a month ago on how to buy your home the halal way. But as of yesterday, as you might have seen on our social media platform, the federal government has begun exploring halal mortgages for our community. So inshallah ta'ala, we'll talk about this, and we have a very special guest who has a very in-depth knowledge of how this works, including the program that's available to the Alberta government as well. So perfect timing, I guess. Here's our agenda for today, inshallah ta'ala. I'm going to take a few minutes to introduce you who we are, what we do, the company I work for. We're going to have our Sheikh Navaid Aziz join us. He's going to go through the current Canadian Islamic finance landscape, including, should you buy your home, should you rent, the rule of 5%, the Musharaka, Murabaha, and Ijara models. He's going to talk about some of the companies that are available when it comes to getting financing. Is halal, is a traditional mortgage halal or haram? And then he's going to talk about specifically, some of the strategies and pitfalls when it comes to buying a home the most halal way possible. Then we have a very special guest today. We're extremely excited to have Momin Saeed join us. He's going to talk a little bit about the current state of real estate in Canada, potentially more so focused on Alberta, Calgary, and Edmonton. He is going to talk about the two different projects that are going on right now. We're talking about the Alberta project, which is in conjunction with the Conservative Alberta government on getting halal financing mortgages available to us here locally. And then he's going to touch base a little bit about the federal initiative and what was involved. Actually, he was one of the individuals who was consulted upon this project. So there's nobody else better in the world right now to talk about that. I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk about how do you plan, how do you save, and how do you purchase your home the halal way. We'll have some resources that we'll share with you, and then we'll have Q&A towards the end of it. So as per usual, time is extremely limited. We're coming to you live on YouTube, so if you have any problems, any issues with your feed, just simply refresh, restart. That should solve 99% of your problems. We also are monitoring the chat on the right-hand side. So basically, if you have any questions, any comments, if you love it, you hate it, please leave it in the comments. We will be monitoring it, and we will be also grabbing your questions from the chat. So do so. And now, if you're joining us on the website, you may not see the chat. So basically, what you will do is you'll click where it says your dream home the halal way. If you click on that banner, or if you click on where it says watch on YouTube, that should take you to the YouTube app or to the YouTube website, and that is where you should be able to leave your comments, and we will grab them from there. Questions going to get asked, so the recording of this webinar will be available. We will try our absolute best to make sure it's available to you after we're done here. We just got to get approval from our sheikh and our guest, and we'll share it with you, inshallah. So yes. Okay, a little bit about myself. My name is Assad. I'm an executive financial consultant as well as a division director with IG Wealth Management. My full name is Hashmatullah. Of course, not Hash. I've been in this company, in this role, alhamdulillah, for about 19 years now, coming up to our 20th year here in November. I have certain designations. One of them is CFP, Certified Financial Planner. That's the P engine of my industry for what I do. This particular certification is the most widely recognized financial planning designation in Canada and throughout the world. So I'm very, very proud to have that designation. Within IG Wealth Management, we happen to be on the securities arm of IG, which means we have the capacity not to only talk to you about mutual funds, but stocks, ETF, SMAs, real estate, crypto. If it exists, we can talk about it. And alhamdulillah, we're fully licensed in the province of Alberta, BC, Nova Scotia, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. Ontario, our biggest province, alhamdulillah. I don't do this on my own. I have a very dedicated, very client-centric team behind me with our consultants, Sultan Al-Kaki, who is located in Edmonton, who holds a double major in finance and accounting from California State University. And then we have Mustafa Asma located in Calgary, who is an 8-year CPA, which stands for Chartered Professional Accountant, and having worked with many institutions such as PwC and KPMG. We have our Sheikh Navaid Aziz, our Imam, our educator, our consultant, to make sure that we're able to invest your money in a halal way. We have Sean Carafel, which has got about 15 years of experience creating financial plans for our clients. Lastly, we're very proud of this number, 46 years of combined experience just in my team, and we have 400 years of combined experience within the company itself, depending on the complexity of your situation and how better we can help you. I'm extremely proud. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, we've been able to change the Canadian Islamic landscape in the last few months. Something I've been working on for the last 19 years, which is making sure that there is a completely publicly available halal investment option where you, either through us or on your own, are able to invest your money in the halal way possible. So we launched the Mackenzie Sharia Global Equity Fund, which is now available, and something that took us a very long time. We're very proud of it to allow you not to only borrow money to buy your home the halal way, but also invest your money in a halal way. And so I keep sharing this because it's a very, very important achievement for us and something we've been working on for close to 2 decades. Last couple slides, halal.asadwal.ca. If you're on LinkedIn, please connect with me. I'd love to have you part of my network. A simple Google search for Assad Wealth Management will land you on our website where you can learn about what we do and, more importantly, what people are saying about us, our reviews and things like that. There's, of course, Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. Of course, last thing, if you're on the website, subscribe. You're there. I'd love to have you as a subscriber on YouTube. We'll continue to share good videos like this and allow you to learn, educate yourself when it comes to Islamic finance and buying a home the halal way. With all that being said, as quick as I could, I'm going to get our next guest to come up, Sheikh Navaid Aziz. He's going to talk about the Islamic finance landscape. My apologies. Sheikh is a Canadian Muslim figure. He is the Imam, and he was the Imam and Director of Religious Studies and Social Services at the IISC in Calgary. My apologies. Sheikh was raised in Montreal, but he moved to Calgary in 2016, 2014 time. I had the pleasure of meeting him right after. He was, I moved to Calgary in 2012, my apologies. Educated from the Islamic University of Medina. He's a teacher at the Maghrib Institute, numerous appearances in both print and media itself. He is our Sharia advisor, our mentor. He's a client, he's a friend. I have some butchered his bio. My sincere apologies, Sheikh. But I'll have you come up and talk to us the next few slides, which is buying home the house the halal way and the rule of 5%.
Jazakallah khair, Hash.
Always
a good time with you, bro. Always a good time. طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا فعلمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا كريم. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. اللهم يسر وسهل وبارك يا رب العالمين. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you so much for joining us today in this very important conversation on should we be buying, should we be renting? And I want to share a story with you. So before I went to the Islamic University of Medina, I remember 3 aunties had come to my mother's house, rahimahullah, and they basically were interrogating her and scrutinizing her decision as to why she was letting me go to the Islamic University of Medina. And they were like, what type of job is he going to get? How is he going to make money? And then the sticking point became, how is he going to buy a house? As if the only value any person has is through the house that they purchase. And that always stuck with me. That, at some point in my life, I want to be able to buy a house so that I can prove those aunties wrong. That vindictive mentality that we need to prove people wrong. But at the end of the day, it's, what makes us happy is that we should be pursuing. So what I want to present to you today and right now for this slide, is it better for you purely from a financial perspective to rent your home or to take a mortgage? This could be a halal mortgage or it could be a conventional mortgage. And what I'm summarizing for you is Ben Felix's 5% rule. He is one of the leading investment advisors with PwC Capital. based out of Eastern Canada. I think this is his most popular video, or at least amongst his top 3 most popular videos. Definitely worth checking out. There is an updated version that was made by an individual by the name of Ted Humphreys out of the United States. He brought it up to the 7% rule, so he's added some points. So you can check both of these videos out, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And they're relatively short. They're both under 12 minutes. So now the question we want to ask is a mortgage payment the same as rent? And that's what we often compare, right? Like we have a mortgage payment for $2,500 and we have rent for $2,500. Are they actually the same things? And the answer is no. The rent is, an unrecoverable cost that you're not going to get anything out of except the immediate benefit of the space that you have access to. Whereas with a mortgage payment, whether halal or not halal, or whether I should say rather Sharia compliant or non-Sharia compliant, there's different things to look at, because eventually you will get some equity. And later on into the presentation, I believe Hash is going to blow your mind as to how long it will take you to actually own decent amount of equity in your actual home. Like a lot of the time, you're just paying off interest. That's all you're doing, subhanAllah. So with that being said, what are the things that we can compare, right? We want to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. We don't want to compare apples to oranges. So Ben Felix presents that you have what we call unrecoverable costs in the purchasing of a house that you have to keep in mind. The first of them is property taxes. You don't have to pay those when you're renting. On average, across Canada, it's about 1%. Number 2 is maintenance of the home, and you can repair your house every 5 years, repair every 10 years. But on average, it's going to come out to 1% per year of the value of your house. And then you have the cost of capital. And the cost of capital is looking at 2 things. Number 1, which is the cost of debt. So when Ben Felix made the video, taking a mortgage from the bank was approximately at 3%, whereas now you're actually looking closer to 6, 7, 8%, depending on the length of your mortgage and depending if it's variable or non-variable as well. And then you have the cost of opportunity, which is, had you taken that very same money and invested it, how much money would you have made? So these are all unrecoverable costs. So in theory, Ben Felix had the 5% rule. What we're actually looking at now is closer to like the 9% rule, the 10% rule because of that. So what he suggests is take the value of the home that you want to purchase and times that by 5% and then divide that by 12. And that is the amount that you will be paying as per this 5% rule. For more accurate numbers, I would actually suggest divided by 9%, and I'll give you something more accurate bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. If you can rent for less than this, renting is a better option. And if you cannot rent less than this, then purchasing your home is a better option. With that being said, in today's market, without a shadow of a doubt, renting is better. In the vast majority of Canadian markets, renting is a better option than purchasing your home, just due to how high the interest rates actually are. So now, this is purely from a financial perspective. From a social perspective, I understand the headache that you have to deal with in renegotiating your contracts. I understand the headache you have to deal with when your landlord is trying to evict you. I understand the headache that you have to deal with when you have to move, right? Moving itself is such a nuisance. I understand all of these things, and those are not being taken into consideration when we're speaking about this. We're just purely speaking about a financial perspective. One thing I will always highlight is people always say that if you purchase your home on a mortgage, at least you're owning equity. And that is not true. That is not true. I want you to see how much equity you own at the end of 2 years when you actually have a mortgage. It's negligible, absolutely negligible, right? On a 30-year mortgage, like they have in the States, at least for the first 20 years or so, all you're doing is paying off the interest up front before you're actually gaining any equity in your actual home. So this is something to keep in mind, that from a financial perspective, is it better to rent or is it better to purchase your home, whether through a halal Sharia compliant mortgage or through a non-Sharia compliant mortgage? Next slide, please. So now, is a conventional mortgage actually halal or not? We know that there's a European Fiqh Council that released a fatwa saying that purchasing your first home on a conventional mortgage is allowed with conditions. right? That Sharia compliant financing isn't available to you. You don't have enough money saved up, nor can you save up enough money in the foreseeable future to purchase your home. And they deemed the purchasing of a house a necessity that Muslims need living in non-Muslim lands. So now to counter this, you have other scholarly bodies that did not agree with this. You have the Assembly of Muslim Jurists in America. They said that no, having a home is not a necessity. And they also said that this does not justify embarking upon a major sin in Islam. So riba, dealing with interest, is haram in Islam and a major sin. However, the European Fiqh Council uses a principle that necessities make the impermissible permissible. So now, with that being said, the general case ruling I would advise is that Muslims should not embark upon conventional mortgages through the banks. There may be very exceptional cases where this may be allowed, but for those cases, please speak to your local imam and your local sheikh, explain your situation, and see if an exception can be made for you. See if an exception can be made for you. For those students of knowledge that are out there, and for those that would like more details, Sheikh Hassan Shaybani, our local imam in Calgary, bachelor's in Sharia, master's in Islamic finance, he's actually made a YouTube series on the IISC's YouTube channel called Fiqhi Debate Interest-Based Mortgages for Buying Homes. And he breaks down the fatwa of the European Fiqh Council as well as some responses to it. Altogether, if I'm not mistaken, it's a 5 or 6 part video, but very beneficial and definitely worth watching for those that want a detailed answer. So my advice, try your utmost best to stay away from the conventional mortgage. If you need to do so, don't take one on your own. Consult your local imam and sheikh first. Make sure that you are eligible for it and then pursue it so that on the day of judgment, you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a clear conscience. Next slide, please. So now, if we cannot get a conventional mortgage, what other opportunities are available to us? And the first thing I want to mention is a foreclosed home that is owned by the bank. And basically, to summarize what we're looking at, in order for a contract to become Sharia compliant, the easiest way to do this is to have a two-party contract, which is the buyer and the seller, and try to eliminate the creditor. Try to eliminate the creditor, the one that is lending the money. If we are going to have a third-party creditor, then it should be at 0%. If we're not going to have a third-party creditor and it is just a buyer and seller, then the seller can raise the price of their house as much as they choose to do so and can actually have multiple price points. So for example, if you were to buy in cash right now, it'll cost you $500,000. If you want to pay it off in 5 years, it will cost you $600,000. If you want to pay it off in 10 years, it'll cost you $700,000. And as long as you agree on one of these price points in advance, then you can pay it off in installments or you can pay it off straight. And that is why Islamically, if the bank owns the foreclosed home and they're selling it to you on installments, they can build in any interest that may be into the price, and it wouldn't be called interest because they are actually the owner of the house, and it would just be considered profit at that time. So that is how a foreclosed home would work. And since this is not joint ownership, you would have responsibility for any liabilities like insurance, like maintenance, like taxes, and everything else that would take place because you are now the owner of it. For further reading, you can go to investopedia.com and look at buying foreclosed homes. They talk about the benefits and the cons of doing so. But just as a point of advice, it has to be from a bank or from a credit union and not from the police department or the fire department or any other department, because in those situations, they will get a third party involved, and that third party will more than likely charge interest, and therefore the foreclosed home would no longer be Sharia compliant. And as always, consult your local imam and sheikh and as well as your legal advisor and financial advisor before embarking upon any decisions. Next slide. Then we have the Islamic models known as Murabaha, Musharaka, and Ijara. So in the Middle East, a lot of the banks will use Murabaha. And what that means is you go to the bank and you tell them that this is the house that I would like to buy. They look at the house and they say, you know what, it looks like a good house. They negotiate a deal on the house, let's just say for $500,000. And then the bank will now own the house and then they will sell it to you on installments with a marked up price. So they bought it for $500,000. they will sell it to you for 650,000 over a period of, let's just say, 10 years or 20 years. So that is how murabaha will work. Musharaka is actually a joint relationship where you will both own percentages of homes. And this is what the vast majority of Sharia compliant financing in North America actually does. So you will end up giving a large down payment, at least 20% in most cases, and you will own 20%, they will own 80%, and on a regular basis, you will purchase shares for them from them at a price that is agreed upon for the house. And then for the utilization of the remaining portion of the house that you do not own, you will be paying rent. You will be paying rent. So that is how the musharaka model works. And then ijara is similar to a rent-to-own scheme. You actually do not find it very, very popular, as most organizations and corporations like to use murabaha and diminishing musharaka as well. Next slide. So now, this is according to Wikipedia. These are the Islamic financing corporations that are available in Canada. You have Ijara CDC, Aya Financial, Zero Mortgage, Manzil, Iqrad, Canadian Halal Finance Corporation, Halal Homes, Murabaha Homes, Anur Cooperative, Ansar Cooperative, Interest-Free Housing, Al-Ihsan Housing, Qurtuba Housing, and a last credit union, which is actually new to me. I don't even know when that opened up. But all that to say, this is off of Wikipedia's website. And just because we've mentioned it, it does not mean that it is Sharia compliant, nor are we endorsing it. But this is just to show you that on a yearly basis, you're having more and more halal financing corporations coming up, and you will have more and more options that you can look into so that you do not have to take a conventional mortgage, so that you don't have to take a conventional mortgage. These options are available to you. And it's one important thing to keep in mind that, yes, even though they may not be 100% Sharia compliant, in my opinion, a lot of them are still better than the conventional mortgage. Like, again, at least you can meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a clear conscience, saying that Allah, I tried my best and I didn't want to deal with interest, so I went with this, even though I ended up paying more. So any mistakes and shortcomings, please forgive me because I tried my best. Next slide. So what are pitfalls that you need to look out for? And this is over an extended period of 20 years here in Canada. We've seen all sorts of nefarious actions that take place in the name of halal financing. And even though they have taken place, don't lose faith in your community. Don't lose faith in the expansion of Sharia compliant products, because we need our own community to build, and we need our own community to invest, and we need our own community to develop the infrastructure, right? So we see things that go wrong and we think, you know what, let's just give up. That should never be our attitude, but rather those are a few spoiled apples and rotten apples, and the vast majority of apples are still good. So the first thing that you want to look at, do you know the people behind the institution that you're investing with? Are they new to the block and have no track record and no history? If that is the case, do your due diligence and find someone that has been known for a long time and is well known to the community. Number two, has the Sharia compliance been verified by scholars? That's the first thing. If they have been verified by scholars, then is it currently up to date? Or was it just a one-time thing that they did and then they've changed their contracts thereafter and they just like to name drop? Oh, our products are verified by Mufti Taqi Usmani, or our products are verified by Sheikh Nizam Yaqubi, like major players in the Islamic finance industry, right? So you want to make sure that it's an up-to-date verification. Number three, and this is a big thing that happens with some of these organizations, are they just taking a conventional mortgage, putting it in a trust, repackaging it, and selling it to you? So for example, the interest rate is 6%. They borrow it on your behalf, put it into a trust, and you're borrowing it from that trust at 8%. So they're automatically making 2% off of that. At that point, if you're going to take a conventional mortgage, you might as well do it yourself, right? Why are you paying someone else to do something haram for you, right? This is, again, unless you have a fatwa, separate case scenario, but this is something that you have to look at. Number four, if it is a diminishing musharaka model where you have joint ownership, then the percentage of ownership should dictate the shared liability, shared taxes, and shared maintenance. Oftentimes what they try to do is tell you that, you know what, because you're the one that's living in it, you have to take care of all the liability, taxes, and maintenance. But in order for it to be truly Sharia compliant, it should be shared upon the percentage of ownership. So the more you start to own, the more you will pay in liability, taxes, and maintenance. The less you own, the less you will pay in liability, taxes, and maintenance. Number 5, always read through the terms and conditions thoroughly with a legal advisor and make sure you're not being conned, make sure you're not being duped. Number 6, always check reviews for customer reviews of customer service, right? When they need money from you, they'll be available. But as soon as they have your money and you need something from them, even a document, it may take months, if not years. We've heard horror stories from that. Last but not least, please, please, please always do your own due diligence, starting off with istikhara, consulting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the istishara, finding other customers that have dealt with those corporations, what their experience has been like, and then your legal advisor, your financial advisor, and your imam and sheikh for Sharia compliancy. Next slide. So now, is there another way to get a house besides a foreclosure and besides Islamic financing? And the answer is yes. You can lend money to yourself from your business and from your RRSP. So if you have a corporation, you can borrow money from your business, and the CRA will require that you pay that money back with interest. But if you are the sole owner of the corporation, this will not be of any harm or detriment to you, because Islamically you cannot pay yourself interest, and therefore it is fine. However, if the corporation has multiple owners or partners, then in that sort of situation it becomes problematic, and this will not apply. So you have to be the sole owner of your corporation in order for this to apply. And whatever money you have in your corporation, you can borrow from it. Just consult your financial advisor and they can tell you how to do so. And they can also tell you how much you will have to end up paying back over an extended period of time. Likewise, your RRSP account in Western Canada, we have a bank called Canadian Western Bank, and this information is a few years old now that needs to be re-updated. But up until a few years ago, the Canadian Western Bank would allow you to develop a contract where you can borrow money out of your RRSP. This is not your first-time home buyer's plan that Hash is going to be speaking about later, but if you had at least $100,000 saved up into your RRSP account, they would develop a borrowing scheme where you would borrow money from your RRSP account and return it with interest. And again, because it is your ownership and you solely own your RRSP account, this would not be considered interest. Now, you should consult your local bank and see if they can make this eligible for you, that you can borrow money from your RRSP account. Not all banks will do this, and I know it's becoming more rare by the day, but this was another opportunity that was available for individuals. Next slide. Now, 4 significant risks associated with borrowing money from your RRSP account. Number 1 is default. If the client defaults on payments, the client may lose the home, and the trustee of the self-directed RRSP has a fiduciary obligation to protect the RRSP assets. Thus, the trustee could force the sale of the home in order to protect the value of the RRSP. So you want to make sure that you have enough cash coming in that you can make your payments for your home, as well as when the time comes to pay back your RRSP, that you're able to pay your RRSP back as well. Number 2, liquidity. The mortgage is not a liquid investment. Thus, it may not be possible for the RRSP to take advantage of other investment opportunities as they come. So this is not investment advice. This is just talking about modern day trends. Gold and Bitcoin have been on a rampage as of recently, and you would have wished that you had liquidity to invest in them, but because all of your money is in your home, you don't have access to that liquidity. Number 3, diversification. You've put all of your eggs in one basket. Something happens to the housing market, then all of your money is depleted and has gone down in value, and Allah only knows best how long it will take to get back up. And then last but not least is the return. The mortgage payments are a fixed amount and thus provide a guaranteed return to the RRSP. The RRSP could be losing out on higher investment yields, such as investing in the Sharia compliant S&P 500 or other halal products that are out there that are averaging 10 to 12% every single year. So these are significant risks associated with borrowing money from yourself, and that is why you have to do your own due diligence and seek your legal and financial advice. Next slide. Now, we've spoken about the dunya. How do you purchase your home in the dunya? And there's two important things that we need to highlight. Number one is your home and your wealth is a form of rizq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So please do not forget the spiritual means of increasing your rizq by continuously making istighfar, right? Just like sins close the doors of rizq and become an impediment for your rizq, then istighfar, saying astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah alladhi la ilaha illahu, al-hayyul qayyum wa atubu ilayh. Sayyid al-istighfar, right? Saying all of these forms of istighfar, they will open up the doors of rizq. Number two, making dua. This can be simple du'as like, oh Allah, increase my rizq. They can be general du'as from the Quran, like Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhab an-nar. Or they could be specific du'as that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us, right? Like Allahumma inni as'aluka ilman nafi'a wa rizqan tayyiba wa amalan mutaqabbala. That, oh Allah, I ask you for beneficial knowledge, a vast sustenance, and deeds which are accepted by you. Last but not least, giving in sadaqah, right? When you give in sadaqah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you back much, much more. And the angels even make dua for you. Allahumma a'ti kulla munfiqin khalafa wa a'ti kulla mumsikin talafa. That, oh Allah, those who give for your sake, give them back much, much more. And those that withheld from your sake, withhold from them and give them destruction. This is the angels' du'as for those that give in sadaqah. Now, last but not least, it may not be a reality for every person. Hash, just go back to the previous slide. It may not be a reality for every person to own a house in this dunya, but you can own a house in the akhirah, right? And that's what we want to make sure that we don't miss out on. The dunya, we're here for a short period of time. Don't miss out on your opportunity to own a home in the hereafter. How do you do that? Building masajid on this earth, right? Praying your sunnah rawatib prayers. 2 before Fajr, 4 before Dhuhr, 2 after Maghrib, 2 after Isha, right? These are all your rawatib, and the 2 after Dhuhr as well. These are your 10 rawatib sunnah prayers that you can pray. And whoever prays these, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will build for them a house in paradise, right? Whoever gives up lying while joking, whoever controls their anger while they're able to act upon it, whoever strives hard to perfect their akhlaq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will build for them a home in the lowest level of paradise, the middle level of paradise, and the highest level of paradise. And the easiest way out is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam even tells us that whoever recites Qul huwallahu ahad 10 times in one sitting, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will build for them a home in paradise. So enact upon all of these as well and make sure you don't miss out on your home in paradise. Now, my final portion, inshallah, last slide from me, is we all know what's happening with our brothers and sisters in Palestine and in Gaza. And we just spoke about the importance of giving in sadaqah. So my dear brothers and sisters, if you have not paid your zakat as of yet, this is a reminder, please do so and consider giving your zakat to our brothers and sisters in Palestine and helping them in the catastrophic situation that they are in. And those of us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed with wealth and are able to give sadaqah, let us continue to support our brothers and sisters in Palestine and in Gaza by any way that we can. There are many reliable charities out there that we can support. Find one that you have a good relationship with, that you trust, and please continue to donate. And this is one of the ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase your rizq and also help our brothers and sisters. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them victory and grant them a way out of their oppression. Allahumma ameen. And I hand it over to my dear friend Hash to invite our next guest on as well, who I'm really excited to hear. MashaAllah. Jazakumullah khairan.
Jazakallah khairan. Truly appreciate it. We are extremely excited to have a new speaker with us. Actually, it's very rare. It's always me and Sheikh Navaid, but we have our brother Momin Saeed from Edmonton to join us. Momin, mashallah, subhanAllah, I actually did not know this, but he has tremendous level of knowledge when it comes to Islamic finance. He is an individual who actually has the degrees when it comes to Islamic finance. So I'm just going to try my best to do his bio, but just bear with me. So he's a Canadian professional, plays active role in Islamic finance throughout Canada. And again, he's located in Edmonton. He holds the certified Sharia advisor from the IIOF board in Bahrain. He's also a charter member of the Chartered Institute of Islamic Finance Professionals in Malaysia. He is involved with book issuance, giving the keynotes, and served as a Canadian country correspondent for the Islamic Finance News, which I actually do read on a monthly basis, especially his article. Anyways, if you don't know, please follow him on LinkedIn. He's got a lot of good information there as well. With nearly 2 decades of experience in real estate development, mashallah, tabarakallah, and investments in Canada through Royal Canadian Development. He has an MBA from the Smith School of Business at Queen's University, a BCom in accounting from University of Alberta. We're extremely proud to have him join us today. He did say he has a bit of a cold, so do forgive him a little bit. But I'm going to have him come and speak a little bit about the current state of real estate. We're going to have him speak a little bit about the new programs that were just recently announced. I know Sarah was asking a question about the new programs, and then I'll let him carry on. Momin, jazakallahu khairan for joining us. We're really glad to have you.
Jazakumullah khair, my dear brother Hash, and Jazakumullah khair, my dear Sheikh Navaid Aziz. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Jazakumullah khair for having me on this wonderful platform. Hash is an amazing person, so anytime people ask me about investments and so on and so forth, ETF, equities, so on and so forth, Hash is my go-to guy. So alhamdulillah, you're in the hands of a very good and capable person. Interestingly, me and Hash actually met. He came to Calgary in 2012. Me and him met in 2013 when he attended my Islamic Finance Professional Development Seminar held at Mount Royal University. So, alhamdulillah, we have a passion for Islamic finance. So today I will just touch on a few items. It's kind of a little bit eclectic in reference of what I'm hitting, but I will just address a few items right now, which is basically the current state of real estate. So in addition to having an Islamic finance advisory, which is called Abrahamic Finance, we're involved with real estate developments and home construction as well. So with that, of course, you have to be above on the trends, what's transpiring, what's taking place, what's shaking, what's happening, right? And the current state is that we're seeing, and this is in particular to Alberta, is, as I'm sure many of you know, that the real estate market is taking off, beginning to take off pretty strongly in Calgary, and then Edmonton, and of course, the various other municipalities. Essentially, what's happening is that we're coming from a retractionary economy. We're going into an expansionary economy, because as the curve goes, we are now moving towards an equilibrium and moving above that now. And there's progress taking place. Now, many of you know that just this past year, approximately 203,000 people, there's a net migration of 203,000 people that came to Alberta. And because of a supply shortage as well, this is resulting into a substantial amount of demand for real estate. And we have a lot of people that come from BC and Ontario, which results them they having a lot of cash and buying assets out. But one of the interesting things as well is that Alberta is performing really strongly. So I was reading a report just the other day, one of my friends shared it, that out of all provinces, 90% of all the jobs that were created in Alberta, 90% of them was from the private sector, not the public sector. And many or a heavy majority of the other provinces, the jobs that were created was from the public sector, meaning the government. So that is a really strong indication and a really positive indication of the Alberta economy and what's transpiring. The challenge here now is, though, how do you get in? When do you get in? And can you get in quickly? And so on and so forth. So some of the things that we do is that we'll work on pooling investment together, and then we'll help develop a project or a pool together, build homes or whatever the case may be. So different ways to do it. And also Hash will be explaining to you the methodology of how to purchase a home. I will say before I move on to the next slide that ultimately, and I was actually made aware of Hash's methodology in reference of the proper financial planning. Honestly, what he's going to present, if you're able to meet those thresholds and do it, that is the best way to purchase a home at the end of the day. And not having to pay a premium, not having to be in something from a longevity standpoint, but getting into a thing that makes sense and saving up for it properly. So now I will just quickly move into the two The two announcements that we have. So the first one is that the federal government announcement, as we know. Now, this one, there's not much too much detail right now that they've shared. I will be honest, I didn't read the full budget. I mean, that is mental gymnastics and an endurance aspect, and I didn't have that time to be able to do that prior to this session. But we know that basically the federal government is doing the same thing, that they're basically exploring Sharia compliant financing options. What does that entail? How does that work? The interesting thing is that I've been speaking with the federal MPs on this for the past many years. I've had many discussions, many talks, and I guess better late than never. But I do feel that this is an important step from the government to recognize that there needs to be a level playing field for all Muslims, or for all Canadians, which Muslims is a subset of. Now, Ryerson University actually did a research paper, and it showcased home ownership amongst major faiths. And although we're the second largest faith in Canada, our home ownership was the lowest out of all major faiths. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it was at like 40 or 50%. Whereas Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Sikhism, they were sitting in the threshold of 75% and above of home ownership. So I think it's high time, when you're almost 6.6% of the country's population, and we're doubling every 20 years, our population size, that this is basically taking place. Interesting thing is, before then I move on to the Alberta thing, because there's not too much right now that they've provided on that, is that the Toronto Financial Services Alliance, they've now rebranded themselves. So they were called the TFSA, and it sounds like the tax-free savings account. So they actually are a public-private partnership. And in 2010 and 2015, they actually issued a white paper. And it was obviously the government, and then private institutions, and you had Deloitte, PwC, KPMG, many other financial institutions, businesses, and they did a white paper to see that how do you make Toronto have a strategic advantage basically over essentially New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Charlotte, right? And one of the main items and what this group proposed was Islamic banking and finance, because Toronto is not able to match those cities from the financial prowess. But what it can do is take a leading role, becoming the global regional center for Islamic banking finance in North America. And again, when we see that Refinitiv has pegged this industry by 2030 to be approximately 6 trillion Canadian, that's no small fish in any capacity. I mean, it's now is high time, right? I mean, Canada's behind the curve, unfortunately, on many of these things, but better late than never. So now, in reference of the Alberta working, so for Islamic Finance News, since I'm their country correspondent, I wrote an article on this, had discussions with the Office of the Minister of Treasury and Finance. In fact, 2 weeks ago, we had an in-person meeting, myself and a few others from the Muslim community, with Minister Nate Horner, who's the Minister of Treasury and Finance for Alberta. And essentially, what the federal government is doing, Alberta is actually the trendsetter here now. So alhamdulillah, it is our province, theoretically, that has actually kickstarted this initiative that now the feds are actually following, which should have potentially been the other way. And also, Ontario has more Muslims than Alberta, but Alberta has showcased that we're not just cowboys and hillbillies or whatever the case may be. We truly are a diverse, a province of diverse cultures, diverse understandings, and we take it serious. So essentially, with what the regulatory framework aspect is that the provincial government is not creating an Islamic financial product, and same with the federal government, they won't be doing that. What they are doing is that they are making an amendment in the legislation so that financial institutions, provincially regulated financial institutions, meaning like ATB, Service Credit Union, Connect First, which is now merging with Service. You have Vision Credit Union, Bow Credit Union, all these financial institutions that are provincially regulated. With this amendment, it's then going to allow those financial institutions to come up with products that are Sharia compliant. So again, I think I wanted to just clarify that, because I think people are thinking that the Alberta government is going to come up with a product. No, they're making an amendment to the legislation to allow financial institutions to create or to provide Sharia compliant financing options. And then Sheikh Navaid mentioned some of them, which can be through Murabaha, which is a debt-based product, Musharaka, diminishing Musharaka, which is an equity-based product, and Ijara, which is a rental-based product. In fact, diminishing Musharaka is actually a hybrid product, because you have leasing and you have an equity component to it. So essentially, that's kind of what's happening here. And one of the things is that I feel that in reference of finance, and again, Hash will be hitting this point. I know that we have this strong desire of just wanting to own a home, but personally, I feel there is more importance over retail. So retail financing is mortgages, home financing, so on and so forth. What is more important than, from my perspective, is commercial financing, business financing. Because if you have Muslim businesses that are able to tap into proper Sharia compliant funding and financing options, when you're able to make your business grow, you're able to provide yourself more liquidity, which gives you access to funds, which will help you purchase your home. And as Ha showed, I mean, Sheikh Navaid talked about that when you have your own business, you can lend your money to yourself, and then you can utilize that to purchase a home. So it makes more sense for you to have a more successful business than for you to just attain debt to buy your own home. So I strongly am of the opinion that that the movement should be towards commercial and business financing in general, in addition to just everyone being, wanting retail financing, and that's about it. One of the things that I did mention to the minister and through my article was that by Alberta signaling that they are ready to provide an environment for Sharia compliant financing, is that it actually opens us up to foreign direct investment once this is properly done. And one of the things that I advised as well through the consultations, discussion, I said, do this right, not fast. It's important to be done right and not just trying to get the political gain, the political goodwill, and then for it to be dead at arrival. We don't want that, and it doesn't benefit anyone. But if done properly, what this will do is actually help Alberta in reference of foreign direct investments that, hey, look, this province is Sharia compliant friendly. And then businesses will want to set up shop here. Sharia compliant family offices, Sharia compliant investment funds may choose Alberta as their regional office. And just Islamic investors, people wanting to invest Islamically, choosing to want Alberta as the base. Now, one of the spill-off effect of that is as well that if we have a strong Islamic financial ecosystem, it leads to then the halal industry, not just the halal finance, but the halal industry. And then consumer products and other items being established here, because as many of you know, that we have all the production facilities here in Leduc, in Nisku, in outside of Calgary for production of various things. And by us doing that, we are actually diversifying our economy and diversifying it to being a hub for alternative financing, which is smart. I mean, it's not putting all your eggs in just one basket. So alhamdulillah, there's progress. There seems to be strong momentum right now. And this is kind of what we want to do. And then basically one of the last items that I wanted to discuss, sorry, I may be going too slow here, is that, so in reference, it's okay, Hash, you can go to the next slide. In reference to IOFI and investments. And so if many of you don't know, IOFI stands for the Auditing Accounting Institution, the Auditing and Accounting Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions. So that's what the acronym IOFI stands for. It's the global standard setter for Sharia standards and accounting standards for IFIs, Islamic financial institutions globally. So with these investment funds, so you'll see the Dow Jones Islamic Market Index and so on and so forth, that McKinsey, that Sharia portfolio that many of these companies use. A lot of the thresholds that they use is what IOFI has permitted from a qualitative perspective. So Islamic finance is broken down when you do these investments in equities, which is stocks, is that the criteria number one is that qualitative. Does it meet the threshold of what is halal, right? So we're not going to be investing in cannabis, liquor, armament, so on and so forth. But then the next item is quantitative. The debt ratio, how much of the income is from actual revenue that's not derived from interest, and so on and so forth. And there's different ratios that IOFI issues. And there's different ratios across the world. I used to live and study in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So the SAC, the Sharia Advisory Committee for Bank Negara Malaysia, which is the Central Bank of Malaysia, they have their own thresholds as well. But IOFI by general is usually a threshold that is used strongly across the world. So when you meet those thresholds, it will meet the items of things being Sharia compliant or not. With the current situation, though, that's taking place in not only Gaza, but in the Sudan. I mean, it's terrible what's happening in the Sudan right now, right? And we should all be reading up on all these different different plights to educate ourselves. But with this current scenario, what I've seen is that obviously as Muslims, we are becoming a lot stronger and a lot more conscious. And it's a wake-up call in reference of what we're doing with our lives. Where are we putting our money? Are we silently and boycotting organizations or whatever the case may be? And that's what's happening. So with this, there's a group of people which is part of the Global Islamic Finance Committee. And we were having a chat. And one of the things that myself and some of the people felt was that, hey, look, when we are meeting these halal
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Sorry, I think we lost Momin. So we will have him come back, inshallah ta'ala, to talk a little bit about the IOFI standards. I'm going to keep going with the presentation if you don't mind, and which is the next step. So we talked a little bit about Sheikh Navaid's presentation, Momin's presentation. Now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty, the meat and the potatoes when it comes to planning, saving, and purchasing your home the halal way. Now, this particular question, how do I buy my home the halal way, is definitely the most frequently asked question in all my career. This is where a lot of people do reach out to us, and that's the first question they ask us. So over time, over the last 19 years, we've been able to help individuals buy their home with cash from anywhere from $1.25 million to a $300,000 condo, anything in between. And because we're not had the capacity to find halal mortgage options over many decades, this option is the one that we've been recommending, and it's been working out very well. So to buy your home halal way, which is buying cash, there are about 3 different steps that you need to follow for this to work. So the first step is going to be to make sure you have a plan in place. The second thing is going to make sure you take advantage of different programs that are available to you, and the third is going to be investing that cash that you have. So the first thing we want to do is buying your home the halal way, is to make sure that you have a plan in place. And for this to happen, what I'm going to suggest for everybody to do is to use what we call the SMART goal framework, and coming up with some sort of framework to be in a position to buy your home with cash. So let's go through this. Let's walk through the SMART goals framework, and I'll explain to you specifically what are the steps that you need to do mentally while you prepare for it. So the first step when it comes to doing the SMART goals is it's got to be very specific. So a specific goal would be to save enough money to purchase a home in a specific location with cash without taking out a mortgage. So that's number one. You got to be specific. Number two, it has to be measurable. To make this goal measurable, you could get or you could set a target for the amount that you want to save based on the average home prices in the desired location that you are in. For example, homes in Calgary have not gone up in value in the last 10 years. They're pretty much the same prices you could buy them 10 years ago, although they have gone up a little bit in the last few months. But generally speaking, but if you're in Toronto, that's a moving target at all time. So the goal could be to save $500,000 over the next 10 years to buy a home. Now, achievable. So evaluating your current income, your current expenses, your saving rate to determine, is it even possible to save $500,000 over the next 10 years? And is it even realistic to do that? So considering factors like, current savings that you have already put away, your potential raises from your work, your opportunities to make good money in the markets, get income increases, borrow some money from friends and family, get some money from back home. And a lot of us have properties back home. Those could be sold and brought in and to allow you to buy your home with cash. Relevance is also very, very important. So buying a home with cash is a highly relevant goal as it eliminates the need for the mortgage and the need for interest payments that comes with it. So making the home more affordable in the long run. And time bound is the most important aspect of buying your home with the halal way, which is buying with cash. So the goal should have a very specific time frame, which is saving $300,000 or $500,000 over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years, and putting it all together. And if you look at the SMART goal framework, it should look like the following: save $500,000 over the next 10 years to purchase a home in Edmonton with cash, without taking out a mortgage. To achieve this goal, you can further down, break it down into different steps. One of the ways we have been able to do that for our clients is by creating what we call a very comprehensive state-of-the-art AI-based financial plans. And the software that we use is called the IG Living Plan. So what we do is we try to figure out with our clients what their dreams are, what their goals are, what their concerns are, what are their priorities. Then we analyze their current financial situation. What do you own? What do you owe? What are you making? What are you saving? What are you spending? Then we develop a financial plan based on those goals. We finalize and implement the plan, but more importantly, we proactively go back to it and respond to it as circumstances change, as the markets change, as you got a capacity to have more money or less money, to put you in a position to do so. Now, speaking with pure experience, we have done this for many, many, many clients. And one of the most surprising things I found by doing this planning, we actually have a lot of clients today who are in a position to buy their home with cash. Somebody who started, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, they're now in a position to buy their home with cash, but they have decided not to do so because their investors are making more money than the rent that they're paying. But there have been many more who have redeemed their investments and put themselves in a position to buy their home with cash. So that's number one. Number two, when it comes to this plan itself, once we create it for you, you will have access to it on the online portal. You can go online, you can see it. We also stress test the plan out a little bit to make sure that, if the markets go up, the markets go down, it's got the capacity to keep up with it. What if you live longer, if you pass away, and some other stress tests that we put it through. Now, the last thing I'll talk about a little bit about here, apologies, there's something going on behind the scenes. There we go, perfect. Is that in addition to making sure that you're focused on buying your home the most halal way possible, that you're also planning properly when it comes to managing your cash flow. The cash flow is a bloodline that runs everything, making sure that you're not spending more than you're making and you really focus on a specific goal. Preparing for unexpected events, things such as, I need to go back home and I need to see my family, or your furnace breaks down, or a car breaks down. Having emergency funds on hand is very important. Major expenditure, which is buying your home the halal way. If you happen to own a business, maximizing those business assets, developing a retirement plan as well. One of the things you got to keep in mind is that by you saving a whole bunch of money to buy a home, you are definitely taking away from the future and living today to buy that home, but it's completely, totally understandable. One of the main things that we want to do as working with us is we want to make sure that you have a comprehensive estate plan, which means you have to have a will, you have to have a power attorney, you have to have a personal directive in place. We have done a lot of work on coming up with Islamic wills, how to create an Islamic will. There's a webinar that we completed on that. If you want to take a look at it, let us know, please, and we'll send you the link for it. But making sure there's a plan in place in case something happens to you, where the money's going to go and how your family is going to deal with it. Now, The second step of buying your home the halal way, which is buying with cash, is taking advantage of the different programs that are available to us. SubhanAllah, I really don't quite understand why this is, but a lot of people do not take advantage of some very basic programs that could really truly help you elevate your game and put you in a position to buy that home much, much faster. So when it comes to Canada, there's about 3 types of money that you can have. There's something called a registered money and a non-registered money. And within each one of them, there's a few different caveats that we have to be mindful of. The non-registered money essentially refers to anything that is not registered with the Revenue Canada. In this case, we're looking at cash, we're looking at gold on hand, checking accounts, savings accounts, your real estate, for example, if you have cars, vehicles. Investments includes also non-registered investments such as stocks, ETF, SMAs, and the investments that we talked about. So that's called a non-registered account. And one thing with this is that when this particular accounts are created, it is not tax sheltered, which means in a given year, if you receive a dividend or if you receive interest payments, those are actually taxable to you in the year that you received it. And if you happen to have capital gains, and if you trigger those capital gains, they're deemed disposed that day in that year, and then you have to pay taxes on it. So there's no tax shelter, but it includes, investments, cash, savings accounts, checking accounts, vehicles, real estate. Those are considered to be non-registered. Tax-free savings account is actually an account that is extremely underutilized in our community. I still don't understand why that's the case, but it's actually one of my favorite accounts. This gives you the capacity to put away close to about $95,000 per person if you happen to be 18 years of age in 2009. So each and every person accumulates a contribution room. And again, you have to be a resident of Canada to be able to get this tax-free savings account. But what happens is that this account is registered with CRA. It allows you to have tax shelter growth. Meaning, if I put in $50,000 into a tax-free savings account and that $50,000 becomes $100,000, I have the capacity to withdraw the $100,000 completely tax-free. No taxes are paid, it's completely tax-free. In this particular account, you got the capacity to hold mutual funds, ETF, exchange traded funds, stocks, and bonds and things like that if you want to, Sukuks. The other account that exists are called the registered accounts, and these particular accounts include things such as, the RSP accounts, the registered account, registered retirement income funds, the spousal RSP accounts, the pension plans, the life income funds. Now, these particular plans are registered with in Canada. There is a specific amount of money that you can put inside of these accounts. They're considered to be tax shelter, which means if I put $50,000 into an RSP and that becomes 100, I do not pay any tax from 50 to 100. But when I go withdraw the 100, that's when I pay the tax on the full amount. In this particular account, you also have the capacity to hold stocks, ETF, SMAs, bonds and mutual funds and things like that. That allows you to grow that money. So there's 3 different accounts: non-registered accounts, tax-free savings accounts, and registered accounts. In that example of registered account will be the first home savings account that came up recently. We'll talk about that in a second, but that also falls under that category. Now, when it comes to buying a home and taking advantage of the different programs that are available to you, one of the basic programs that everybody should be looking into is called the Home Buyers Plan, the Home Buyers Plan. So what this particular plan does, it allows you to borrow money from your RRSP up to a tune of $35,000 per person, which means you and your spouse $35,000 each, a total of $70,000, complete tax-free from your RSP to put you in a position to put a down payment against your first home. Very, very important. Now, you're given 2 years grace period and you got 15 years to pay that RSP money back. But alhamdulillah, there's actually some recent changes in the new budget that came out. They now increased the withdrawal to $60,000 per person, tax-free withdrawal. So again, if you have $120,000 in an RSP, you can withdraw $60,000 under your name. And if your spouse has $60,000, he or she can also withdraw $60,000 complete tax-free, and that could go against your down payment on your house, against your first home. It's very important to know. There's also something called the first-time home buyers tax credit, HBTC. This tax credit allows qualified home buyers to claim federal tax credit up to $10,000. There's a provincial amount that also varies as well. Qualification for this is very similar to being for what they consider the first-time home buyer. Spousal RSP, in our community, sometimes there are individuals who are working and their spouses are staying at home. You have the capacity to contribute to a spousal RSP, which will give you the tax break to this working spouse, gives them the capacity to write off that against their income, but the spouse that stays at home gets the money and therefore they can withdraw from the two pools of money, 60,000 from the spousal and 60,000 from their own personal account. The first home savings account, which was introduced just last year, actually, it's a combination of the RSP account and a tax-free savings account. It's actually a very good program. Right now, it's a little bit limited, which means you had the capacity to put in $8,000 per person into this account in 2023. You have to have an account set up in 2023, and you can contribute another $8,000 in 2024. Essentially, the way it works out, there's a $40,000 lifetime contribution limit, and you're maxed out at about $8,000 per year. It'll take you 5 years to max that out. So the cool thing with this particular program is that the contributions that you do make to the FHSA, you have the capacity to write that off against your income, which is very, very good, which means you don't have to pay tax on that. The money grows tax-free inside of this account, which is tax-sheltered, if you recall the conversation, and then also allows you to grow that wealth and completely take it out tax-free, and you're not required to pay that money back to the FHSA, whereas the RSP, you are required to pay that money back. Tax-free savings account, you are not required to pay that back. Again, once we do max out the FHSA contribution, which would be in about 2028, again, it's about 8,000 per year, 5 years, that is when you're able to contribute up to $40,000 per person into FHSA, complete tax write-off, and that will allow you to buy your home with that down payment. Now, to qualify for the first-time home buyers, the home buyers plan under the RSP and the FHSA, just keep in mind, if you're actually somebody who had owned a home in the last 4 years and you don't own that home anymore, you're also considered a first-time home buyer. It doesn't mean you're physically the first-time home buyer, and you can hold the same type of investments that you can hold inside an RSP, a tax savings account, as well as a non-registered account. So a first-time home buyer, an individual is considered to be a first-time home buyer if at any time in the past in the part of the calendar year before the account is opened, or any time in the preceding 4 years, they did not live in a qualified home. So that's basically the definition of a first-time home buyer. So you could have been somebody that owned a home 5 years ago. You're considered now to be a new first-time home buyer, and therefore you can go ahead and withdraw money from the RSP or FHSA. Now, I want to walk you through a quick example here when it comes to the two different individuals. I'm just using the example of Ahmed. I'm assuming him to be in a 30% tax bracket, and he's looking to buy a home. Most of the time, individuals say, let's just say they have $150,000 down payment. What they will do in scenario number one is they will take the $150,000, make a down payment, and either borrow money from a traditional bank or through the halal mortgage perspective, and now they have put down $150,000. The second scenario, the way it would work out is that if the individual is able to take $35,000, contribute that into their own RSP, $35,000 contribution into a spousal RSP, if they have the capacity to max out their FHSA at $40,000 each, file their taxes, there's a potential tax refund of about $45,000, a tax refund of $45,000. All they have done is they've taken the same $150,000, put it through the different programs, and generated literally $45,000 out of thin air. And now the down payment is $195,000. The down payment is now $195,000. So the same scenarios apply, the same level of money applies, but then taking advantage of different programs is extremely important, or having the knowledge of these programs and having worked with an advisor who can guide you through this, and making sure that you're not over contributing based on your maximum limits when it comes to RSPs, TFSAs, and FHSAs. So again, if there's anything that you're going to learn from this presentation, would be your capacity to generate $45,000 by just taking advantage of different programs that are available to you. Now, what we have done is through our financial planning software, I've created different scenarios, different financial plans based on different individuals. And what I asked the software, I said, you know what, if I have, say, $150,000 saved up and I'm looking to buy a $600,000 house, how much do I need to save each and every month to be in a position to buy that home with cash? Right? So I have $150,000 saved up. I'm an individual who is in a 40% tax bracket. I'm assuming a very minimal 6.5% rate of return on my investments. I'm taking advantage of the RSP accounts, tax-free savings accounts, and non-registered accounts. I'm not taking advantage of the FHSA at this point. But if I have $150,000 and I have the capacity to save $3,600 a month, in about 8 years, I should have enough money to buy that $600,000 house. Now, If somebody that can save $2,500 a month, exact same scenario, it will take them 10 years to have enough money in cash to buy that home, in investments to buy the home with cash. And if you want to drag it out a little longer, 15 years, you'll be in a position to buy a $600,000 house. Now, the question is, Hash, that house is not going to be $600,000 in 15 years. You're absolutely correct, 100%. But in 15 years from today, there will be a house that you can buy for $600,000. May not be the exact same house that we're looking at today, but just something to keep in mind. So just give you some numbers, some ideas that it's actually really not that impossible to pull this off. I did an example here of a $450,000 house purchase, somebody who has saved $100,000. And if they got the capacity to save $2,500 a month over the next 8 years, they will be in a position to have $450,000 to buy that home with cash. Simple as that. If somebody wants to do that in 10 years, it's $1,800 a month, right? Again, assuming taking advantage of the home buyers plan, RSPs, DFSAs, non-registered account, and again, a reasonable 6.5% rate of return, and assuming a 30% tax bracket. Here's an example. Somebody wants to buy a $300,000 condo in Calgary, and they got $50,000 saved up so far. Well, if you got the capacity to save an additional $1,400 per month, well, you'll be in a position to buy that condo with cash in about 10 years. And if you want to do it a little bit faster at $1,900 a month, it will take you 8 years to buy that home with cash as well. Now, one of the reasons I shared this with you, and I'm not giving you a very direct solution today, is because of certain things that you have to be mindful of. Now, when it comes to lending, when it comes to borrowing money, and just like when it comes to eating, there's something called the halal tax or the profit rate. Now, traditionally, these rates are a little bit higher than the bank advertised mortgages. For example, right now, a 5-year mortgage at the bank maybe is 4.9% or 5%, but the halal mortgages start out at bare minimum 7.75%, and some of them go as much as 9.5%, and if not 10%. These are very expensive adventures to go on, but nonetheless, if you wanted to do so, you can. Now, what I did here is I ran through some numbers. I looked at this and I say, you know what, somebody who's looking to buy a $500,000 home, they want to amortize this over 25 years, and they're paying an 8% interest. So you're buying a $500,000 home, and you are paying this over 25 years at 8%. Here's something very, very interesting. By the time that you're done, total amount of payments for that $500,000, you have actually paid $1.2 million. So that $500,000 house, by the time you're actually done paying for it over the course of 25 years, you have paid $1,144,820. Okay, that is per cost of interest. What actually really boggles my mind is that the payments on this particular mortgage is about $3,816.07. So $3,816.07. After the first year of you paying $3,800 a month, your balance of the $500,000 goes from $500,000 to about $494,000. So you had 12 months of payments. All you paid down is about $6,000 on that. So I took this out a little bit further, and I said, okay, well, let's keep going. So again, after the 12th month of paying $3,800 a month, all I have done is I paid out $6,000 on the balance of the $500,000, and the majority of my money is going towards interest. So if you look at the interest right here at 8%, $3,300 a month is going towards interest, $482 is going towards principal. I looked at it after 10 years. So after 10 years of you paying $3,800 a month towards a $500,000 mortgage, you essentially have managed to pay that mortgage down to about $412,000. $412,000. You start with $500,000, you owe $412,000, which means you managed to pay out about $88,000 on that mortgage over the course of 10 years. That is absolutely insane, which means you still got another 15 years to go before this thing even starts coming down. So I said, okay, so let's start out with a balance here. So, I'm starting out with $150,000 investments, and I can save $3,800 a month at 6% return. How long it will take me to be in a position to buy a $600,000 house? 7.5 years. In 7.5 years, I got $660,000 in cash that I can go ahead and buy the house and call it a day. I don't have a payments. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have to deal with interest. Nothing is questioned here. I just took 7.5 years to put myself in a position to do that. Either you have 25 or 30 years of paying this mortgage down, or you can, buckle up a little bit, come with a financial plan, save the money properly, and be in a position 7-10 years from now where you can buy that home with cash. And these are actual numbers that you can run through it. But again, somebody who's starting out with $150,000, They can save $3,800 a month at 6% ROI. You'll be in a position to have $660,000 in 7.5 years. So this is why Momin and Sheikh Navaid was talking about that these numbers are actually mind-boggling when it comes to paying this down. 10 years, $3,800 a month, all you've managed to pay down is $88,000 on your balance, and you still owe $412,000. Something to keep in mind. Step number 3, we're kind of coming up against time here, is to making sure that you invest money in halal way. Like, I mean, just purely saving that money is not going to work. You have to put that money to work. And one of the things I actually noticed by doing this experiment over the last 10 plus years, I'll have a lot of clients who were on the 10-year plan. I would say, you know, they would be in a position according to the financial plan in 10 years, but they were actually able to buy their home a lot sooner, some 7 months, some 6, some 8, all because of the markets. The markets ended up being very, very good. They got the capacity to make more than 6.5% rate of return, and they were in a position to buy their home much earlier. So the markets play a role in all of this as well. And at Assad Wealth Management, what we have done is we find a way to control your financial destiny while observing your principal. We have created investment portfolios that go through 2 levels of filtration. Number 1, we want to make sure that investments are done in a halal sector, the business that you're investing your money into, the business that you're investing your wealth into, be it buying your home the halal way, be it your retirement, be it your kids' education plan, be it your business assets. First thing we do, we want to eliminate anything that has to do with advertising. We eliminate any media, Netflix, Disney's, and cinema operators. We eliminate any financials. That includes the banks and insurance companies, gambling, alcohol, pornography, weapons. Those are not going to be part of your portfolio when it comes to investing your money. Because, I mean, we want to buy the home the halal way, but to get to that position, we want to make sure that money is invested in a halal way. The second thing that we do is we look at the accounting level. So once we filter through the companies that are in halal sector, then we look at the guts of those companies to make sure that are compliant as well. We look at their debt to equity ratios. We look at the cash compliance, how much cash do they have? They're actually in active business or not. And then we look at things such as the revenue from non-compliant activities, which has to be less than 5%. So we do our own due diligence. We have a Sharia supervisory board that looks at these investments on a monthly basis to make sure the criteria are met for you to go on the journey to buy your home in a halal way. Our portfolios are custom made based on individual clients. We use exchange traded funds, we use mutual funds, and then we use individual stocks to put you in a position to allow that money to grow in a halal way and buy your home. Super extremely proud of this. I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, after 19 years of working very, very hard, we were able to launch our own investment. It's called the Mackenzie Sharia Global Equity Fund, which is publicly available to everybody and everybody across Canada. And what we do is we utilize this as one of the vehicles to allow you to invest your money in a Sharia compliant way. Now, working with us, you have access to stocks, ETF, mutual funds, SMAs, RESPs, RDSPs, RRSPs, tax-free savings accounts, FHSAs, you name it, if it exists, we have the capacity to work with you and create those. Last few slides, basically our motto at the end of the day is to make sure that we bring your deen plus dunya into one. We do not want to compromise your akhirah in capacity if you're to be able to achieve the dunya achievements here in buying your home. So we always are very mindful of bringing the two together. That's been our motto for the last 19 years, and we'll continue to grow on that. Now, last slide here is the cash thing. SubhanAllah, I do run into a lot of individuals in our community who have a lot of money, but they're literally sitting in checking accounts, not even savings accounts. Now, this is okay to do so, but you have to be mindful of 2 things. Number 1, if you got money sitting in a checking account, you have to pay as account on it 2.5%. And the last thing is inflation. Inflation has been a topic conversation for many, many years for us, but it really became very relevant to a lot of people in the last few years. So if you have wealth, even if you assume a bare minimum 2.5% inflation and you pay 2.5% zakat, your wealth has to grow at bare minimum 5% just to say you have the same amount of money next year at this point. So it's very, very important that money is invested in growing. And the psychology of wanting to own a home, having very in-depth conversation with clients. I've had clients in my office who are literally crying because some of the deals that they got into, some of the companies that they got into, which they found that were not halal. I've been through a lot of this. But the Maslow law and the hierarchy of needs basically says this model shows that owning real estate appeals to human psychology and the physical need for shelter. And there is going to be times where, you know what, you're going to throw in the towel and you're going to go buy that home with interest. That's fine. There's a high need for us as humans to have and the need for shelter, the need for safety and security, the need for love and belonging, self-esteem and self-actualization. So I totally get it. I totally understand it. And this is why this is one of our famous webinars, and we have a lot of people attending it because it makes a lot of sense. A couple of different resources for you here, which is, buying versus renting your home, how to decide. You're welcome to take a QR code of this, or just look up these videos on YouTube. Renting versus buying, the 5% rule that Sheikh Navaid talked about at the beginning of the presentation. Renting versus buying home, which is better for you. There's a couple of different resources that you can further research this. Now, 10 minutes we got left. We're going to do a Q&A. But before we get to the questions, I'm going to get the guests to come back. And before the guests can come back, can I get everybody just to take 1 minute? It will take you literally 1 minute. We just need your feedback in terms of how this presentation was and what do you like about it, what you didn't like about it. And we have no idea who you are, so all the feedback is welcome. If you loved it, alhamdulillah. If you didn't, please let us know. We want to improve. We want to make sure we provide as much value as possible for the time that you spend with us. One of the feedback that does come in quite a bit is I speak very, very fast. The reason I do that is I want to make sure I provide you as much value as possible in the least amount of time. So I appreciate that as well. But s.asadworld.ca/halalhome. Please just take a few minutes, take the QR code, scan it, let us know how we did, and then I'm going to get the guests to come back and answer any questions that you may have, inshallah ta'ala. It looks like there's quite a few questions here. So we will start off with that, inshallah ta'ala. Perfect. I'll leave this up here, and I'm going to run a quick timer for about 1.5 minutes. If everybody can just take a few seconds to let us know how we did, and go from there. Momin, are you back?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Are we in the private chat or public chat right now?
You're public.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't realize my connection completely cut off. So I was like enjoying my dandy conversation. It's showing me that all is good. And then it went abruptly to you speaking. And I was like, wow, that was an abrupt thing. Did I say something wrong? Then
we love you.
Told me.
We love you. It just cut off. I could hear you. It was like, and then whoop.
Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened.
No, that's okay, man. That's okay, inshallah. We will give everybody a few seconds just to do a quick feedback on the webinar, and then we'll start taking some questions. And depending on how many questions we have, we may not have a lot of them. So we appreciate everybody's patience and understanding on this. Momin, while we wait for these for the surveys to come in, did you want to finish off your thoughts on the IOF?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, in the nutshell, what we're wanting to do is that we're a group of us are creating a framework where we're going to be presenting, inshallah, to IOF. I mean, I'm already IOF certified, but in addition to that, we are wanting to bring in that if there are organizations that are supporting genocide, war crimes, so on and so forth, even if they meet the halal threshold from a quantitative perspective, but we need to add in another quantifier that if they are doing that, then those companies cannot be invested in anymore from a Sharia compliance perspective. Because the maqasid of Sharia is preservation of life, which is the first item: preservation of life, intellect, lineage, property. So there's the five maqasid. And if it's not fulfilling that, why are we investing in such companies who are actually contradicting the maqasid in and of itself? So that's kind of where we're at. And I truly believe that if we do that, some of these companies, it will make them reconsider of supporting such initiatives, such campaigns, and to be honest, even the ESG and so on and so forth, it will fall even more in line of them wanting to take Sharia compliance in more detail. And at the end of the day, it just showcases how much rahmah there is in our deen, that, you know what, no, we're not going to be investing with such companies that are not upholding a proper standard.
Jazakallah khairan. I truly appreciate that, Momin. Yeah, Sheikh, there's a question for you.
Sorry,
Sheikh
Navaid,
cut
out again?
No, you're good. You lost him again.
Yeah, we just lost him again. Subhanallah.
Sheikh Navaid for you. Sheikh Navaid was talking about no third party to charge interest if a bank buys. I think I lost him. If a bank buys a house for $500,000 and asks $200,000 on it for 10-year payment, that's halal because the bank owns the house.
Yeah, so
Yes.
I think there's two scenarios to this. Number one, what happens in the Middle East, and that's the murabaha model. Basically, you'll find the bank, you'll find the house, take it to the bank, and the bank will purchase it and then sell it to you for a markup on installments. This is the murabaha model, and that would be perfectly fine. For our context, I'm not aware of any murabaha contracts that are available in Alberta right now. But the closest thing would be the foreclosure that I spoke about. So in the case of the foreclosure, that's exactly what we would be looking at. The bank owns the house already, so they wouldn't need to purchase it, and therefore they would just sell you the house on installments, and they can build in any fees that they would like to charge into the final product, into the final price itself, and sell it to you on installments, and that would be halal. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.
Does that also apply to commercial properties too? I assume so.
Yes, that would also apply to commercial properties as well. Yes.
Perfect. So from tax perspective, is becoming a non-resident of Canada a good way to save money in taxes in Canada? I heard that being a non-resident removes the personal income tax portion when you are self-employed. So the way taxation works in Canada is that if you are a resident of Canada, you don't have to be a citizen, right? So citizenship is very different from residency. So if you're a non-resident of Canada, then you're not exposed to the Canadian tax regime, and therefore what happens outside of it is really not a concern of CRA. But if you accumulate assets outside of Canada and then you enter Canada back, you are deemed to have disclosed those assets and the fair market value of those assets. So for example, if you own a home in India and all of a sudden you want to come back to Canada, you have to tell the CRA that you own this home and you bought it for this much amount of money. So when you go back to sell it, being a resident of Canada, you are taxed on the worldwide income, and therefore it's extremely important to keep track of those things. Okay, would this program scale with home prices? Would this program scale so it's a good question. Would this scale with the home prices in Ontario? So probably Ontario and Vancouver. My comment with that particular region is the following. When you look at the different cities that exist in the world, and I would take a guess there's maybe 10 million cities, Allahu Alam, at least there are more than a million cities across the world. The top 10 most expensive cities in the world, in the top 5, is Toronto and Vancouver. So what's happening to you folks is actually not normal. Is complete abnormal when it comes to across the world. So you are in a very different situation when it comes to keeping up with this program. But one thing I would say is that if you're trying to do it in a halal way, sometimes we as humans try our best, and then sometimes there's help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that comes in the ways that we don't imagine it. Calgary, for example, like I said, in the last 10 years, there has not been a lot of movement when it comes to real estate. So we've been lucky enough for this program to work here in Calgary. But you're right, a little bit tougher to do so in Ontario. One thing I would say with the program that we talked about in the webinar is that by following this program, the absolute worst thing that you will do is that you'll have more money. You'll have more money. So if you manage to save $500,000 and all of a sudden there's actually a halal mortgage available either through some of the companies that exist or through the federal programs, then guess what? You got $500,000 that you can put down as a down payment on a $1.5 million home. Then you're still able to achieve that goal. So worst case scenario, you have more money saved, and best case scenario, you move to Alberta.
Why not Manitoba, bro? Winnipeg's even better off.
I mean, it's Calgary.
Alhamdulillah. Calgary is the best, bro. Calgary is the best, mashallah.
Yeah, so the cost of borrowing will not be 8% for 25 years. You're right. I mean, it could go up, it could go down. I mean, I just give an example of what the current prevailing interest rates are. If that could go to 4%, that'd be a very different story. But you got to remember the fact that there's a halal tax. Even if the prevailing interest rates are 2%, you're still paying a 5.5%, 6% on the halal mortgages, mortgages, I guess I would call it that. So there's always going to be some way of looking at that. But also keep in mind, if the prevailing interest rates go down with the Bank of Canada to 3%, your stock investments and portfolios with us are going to be making a lot more in terms of profits, because if interests go down, stocks go up, that investments go up. So there's a few different moving parts there. Sheikh, this is for you. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Question for Sheikh Navaid. Are there any mortgage companies in Alberta that you consider to be closely adhering to the Sharia standards? Good question.
Excellent. So there's two things to look at: those that are based out of Alberta and those that are servicing Alberta. As for those that are based out of Alberta, unfortunately, I cannot recommend any of them. In fact, the one that we were looking at, the Halal Financing Corporation of Alberta, a lot of people had to rescind their recommendation. At the head of them, Al-Rashid Masjid, for that corporation, just due to different reasons. So there's nothing based out of Alberta that I can recommend. With regards to outside of Alberta that are servicing Alberta, you do have a few of them, but all the normal disclaimers will apply, saying that while they are as close to Sharia compliant as possible, I cannot give a 100% clear endorsement for 100% Sharia compliancy. So go back to the list that we offered, go through them, see which ones are servicing Alberta, and then do your own diligence by speaking to your local imam and sheikh, by seeing what is it that you feel comfortable with regards to Sharia compliancy, because that term is a very vast term that means a variety of different things to different people.
Maybe Momin, you can comment on this, or Sheikh Navaid. How do you find foreclosure houses, and is this a viable solution for purchasing through installments?
So this is prior to the pandemic. I knew a few brothers in Calgary that did this, and alhamdulillah, they've had very, very good experiences. They had just reached out to their real estate agents. They were good friends with them, and the real estate agent kept a very close eye on the market. And as soon as something popped up, he literally had to jump on it on the same day in order to get it. So they had their finances ready. They had everything set to go. As soon as the house popped onto the market, they purchased it right away and made the deal with the bank. So I would suggest first step number one is find a real estate agent that you're close to and has your best interests in mind. And number two, get all your finances and your paperwork in order, so that if something does pop up, then inshallah you're able to jump on it right away. And maybe this could be point zero. Know what you're looking for, right? So as soon as you know what you're looking for, it pops onto the market, you can make a decision right away, as opposed to having to wait. A foreclosed home that comes on the market usually goes within 24 to 48 hours. So you need to jump on it right away.
Momin, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, no, I agree with Sheikh Navaid. Having a strong realtor who is active, has their ear to the ground on this, is the best solution for this, to get access to such assets. So, I mean, Sheikh Navaid's definitely hit the nail on the head with that.
There's actually a question that comes up quite a bit, Sheikh. I've been asked this question many times in the past. Any options for moving people who've actually in conventional mortgages paying interest? They want to move into a halal option now. Recommendations, suggestions?
So the first thing that I would say is, did you take the conventional mortgage based upon the fatwa, like you said, with local imam, local sheikh? If you did that, then inshallah you have nothing to worry about, because the onus is now on the sheikh and not upon you, and you don't need to worry about that. Number two, if you didn't do that, then I would suggest trying to move to any of the options that are available to you, because as I mentioned, any of those options will be better than a conventional mortgage. But let me give you a caveat over here. Look at the financial cost of that. Like, breaking a mortgage will have its own penalties. And then with the highest interest rates right now, going into a new contract, you maybe end up losing a lot more money. And as our brother Momin mentioned, one of the objectives of the Sharia is to protect wealth. So we don't want to be frivolous with our wealth, where we're just disposing it unnecessarily. So do your own research, do your own diligence, see what's available to you, see what all the costs are. And again, sit down with the local imam, sit with the local sheikh, and see what's actually best for your deen as well as for your finances combined.
Deen plus dunya. Do you work with all individuals or only high net worth individuals? What is considered high net worth? Excellent question. So we work with all individuals. There's two different tiers of working with us. Number one would be starting with one of our associates. We have Sultan and we have Mustafa. For them to start off, you need bare minimum, a minimum of $50,000 in terms of investable assets, ideally $100,000. And I usually tend to show up at about $500,000 mark personally. So those are some of the numbers. If you have less than $500,000, you still want to work with me directly, we can have a conversation around that. But yeah, so bare minimum $50,000 to start with my associates. I personally show up at about $500,000. Jazakallah khairan for that question. I'm not sure how to answer this question. How are you guys able to fund this initiative? Where's the capital sources coming from?
I think this brother is assuming that you provide Islamic financing.
Mortgages, yeah. You missed the whole point. So one of the jokes that I always tell people, clients, is that the fact that we don't give money, we only take money. So the way the plan that I've laid out for you would be coming up with a financial plan, making sure that you have a written comprehensive financial plan, saving your money, taking advantage of different programs that exist, investing that money over the long term, and being in a position to use that savings, that investments in 5, 7, 10 years to buy your home with cash. So we do not provide any financing. We're using your own funds, allowing you to save and be in a position to buy your home that way. I hope that's understandable. Thoughts on high net worth Muslims coming together and supporting the less wealthy Muslims to start business / owning homes, and didn't the Sahabas follow this practice to strengthen the overall ummah?
So, I mean, I can't speak about opportunities for homes and businesses, but I do know in Ontario, out of Windsor and out of Dallas in Texas, they have initiatives for helping student loans. So that you don't have to take an interest-based loan, they are providing interest-free loans, and they have like these schemes where you can pay back, and you'll be committed to giving a portion of your salaries once you are graduated and employed. So I think it's a great concept. Anytime that we can break out of an interest-based economy is in our own best interests. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that are needed. Number one, people being God conscious. Number two, people being community oriented, having faith in their community. Number three, being high net worth. And people don't realize the fitna of wealth, right? When you get wealthy, you want to actually become more wealthy, and you always look for those opportunities that will make you more wealthier. So if there's something that's not making you a lot of money, the fitna is, why should I invest in it? And this is why being God conscious and community oriented is so important. So that's what I can suggest over there. It's a great idea in theory. On a practical level, it's very hard to sell unless we develop God conscious generations that believe in our community.
Momin, maybe I'll get you to comment on this if you don't mind. Are there any options that you are aware of when it comes to halal financing in US? I mean, I know you're in touch with a lot of individuals, but does US have halal mortgages that we don't have?
Yeah, so just to answer quickly on the previous question as well, in
Sure.
Edmonton, there is Ayana Financial that also does help with student loan financing. So that
Where are they based out of, Momin?
Out of Edmonton.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I think Dr. Manzar Kaf provided advisory for that. I mean, it's not massive, but they do. And then one of the things that we also spoke with the government was about having sustainable, affordable housing, creating an investment vehicle where government grants go in, and then Muslim investors also invest, and they get a respectable return. You're not going to get a crazy market return, but so long as you're getting a respectable return, that's going to be an avenue. So I think high net worth individuals also need to recognize that aspect, and that's one way to do it. In reference of halal mortgage companies in the U.S., I guess the large line of share is Guidance Financial, Guidance Residential, but also you have La Riba, Dr. Yahya, which is the Bank of Whittier in I think Southern California. That is another. Then you have Devon Bank in Chicago. And there's a couple others as well that are there. So there are some options out there.
And I would just add to that, the Assembly of Muslim Jurists in America, they have vouched for guidance. So you can read their paper on the Sharia compliance of guidance on their website. So Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America, AMJA. Yeah.
Perfect. Sheikh, there's a program that exists. I know some people have taken advantage. It's called the Habitat for Humanity. I think it's in Calgary. I'm not sure if it's in Edmonton or not. I do not know how that works, to be honest with you, but thoughts on those from both of you?
Yeah, it is Canada-wide. And I remember the one that we had looked at in Calgary. I didn't see any issues with it, but understand that mainly it is for low-income households, and you do have to volunteer a few hundred hours of your time in building other people's homes as well. So it's not just you're getting a free or a low, cost house. So just do your due diligence when you're doing that and know what you're getting into. Like if you don't have the time to help build someone else's home, this may not be the right opportunity for you.
Yeah, Sheikh is right. I mean, it is Canada-wide. In fact, it's North America-wide. I think even what's his name, Jimmy Carter, he volunteers, the former U.S. president. So yeah, it is in general for halal from that perspective. In fact, I did have a friend, so it is more of an affordable housing option, but they got into that with their family. They were able to stay there for a bit. They were able to save, get out their cash, and then move into a single family home that they were able to afford. So it is an option actually that can be looked into.
Alhamdulillah. I did not know that. Perfect. Listen, folks, we're over a little bit of time. So, Jazakallahu khairan, Narisa, and Jazakallahu khairan to you guys. From my side, again, everybody, barakallahu feekum for coming in, and Jazakallahu khairan for joining us. I hope this webinar was informative. I hope you learned a few things. I hope this helps you in your journey to buy your home the halal way. And if we can be of any benefit to you, of any service to you, please let us know. Really appreciate you being all here as well. Our esteemed guests here, Sheikh Navaid Aziz and Brother Momin. And I'm done, so I'll stop talking. Momin, if you want to say some stuff, and then we'll get our Sheikh Navaid to take us out with the dua.
No, I mean, fantastic webinar. Thank you everyone for attending. And inshallah, if you guys are able to work with Hash and do this financial planning, it's the best solution from basically all options, to be dead honest. So inshallah, do that. And I look forward to inshallah connecting with you guys again.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم لك الحمد كله ولك الشكر كله وإليك يرجع الأمر كله علانيته وسره فأهل أنت أن تحمد وأهل أنت أن تعبد وأنت على كل شيء قدير اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وأنعم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Oh Allah, we ask you to forgive our sins and shortcomings. Oh Allah, we seek forgiveness from you for all of our mistakes and sins and shortcomings. Oh Allah, we ask you to help our brothers and sisters in Palestine, particularly in Gaza, to overcome their oppressors and to be victorious. And those that are hungry, please feed them. Those that are thirsty, please quench their thirst. Those that are in need of wealth, please provide rizq and wealth for them. And those that are injured and sick, please grant them shifa and afia. Those that are deceased, have mercy upon them and accept them as shuhada, and allow the living to be victorious over their oppressors. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. O Allah, make our wealth a proof for us and not a proof against us. O Allah, bless us with many, many homes in Jannah that are close to you. O Allah, facilitate for us the purchasing of homes in this life through a halal means that is pleasing to you. And O Allah, do not let us depart from this dunya except that you are pleased with us. Allahumma ameen. Sallallahu wasallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.